What's up, Itoba? Today I'll be reacting to how US became a superpower, but before I go into that, let me ask you for one thing. If you can leave a like, thank you so much for that. It's the best way to show support. If you can subscribe, well, you make my day. Have that in consideration. Now, let's go into the video. Link for the original one on my description, but let's see what this one is about.
Today, the United States is the largest superpower in the world. But
no doubt about that.
has that always been the case? The answer
yeah, of course not. I mean, we know that the history for America is fairly recent compared with other nations, but right now, you guys are #1 by a large margin, at least my perspective from what I've been studying / learning.
answer to that question is a resounding no. In fact, up until the Second World War, the United States had no interest in becoming a major power. If that's true, how did America become a superpower? And why did it happen after World War II? We hear
This is actually the question. I'm really curious because I don't know that well how America became so strong. Again, probably in the right place at the perfect time. There is a lot of that, fighting, being in the good side of the war. But it's still fascinating how America... And look, I'm saying this, praising America, to be honest. You guys... If you really think about 200 years ago, not a super relevant nation in terms of military power, and right now you guys run the world. That's amazing.
hear the word superpower all of the time, but what does that really mean? You'd be surprised to learn that there's no real definition of what makes a country a superpower, at least. Okay,
so my definition is, first, a superpower is a country / nation that can fight a major war and be a strong contender to win. Second, is a first world country with a lot of money, most of the time related with capitalism, and I think that's it.
Least one that everyone can agree on. Also, there are no specific numbers a country needs to achieve to be considered a superpower, be it the size of the army, the country's GDP, or the number of allies it has. So if there's no definition of superpower, or specific numbers that a country needs to achieve, then how do you know if you are a superpower? It mostly comes down to what other countries think. If they believe you are a superpower, then you probably are a superpower.
Makes sense.
But that is not enough to define superpower. We must look deeper into what makes a superpower. Perhaps there are certain traits that all superpowers share. In fact, there are. Military might. Superpowers need to have a large and powerful military. They must be able to project force.
I mean, this is kind of obvious. If you are a super rich country but you have no protection, you probably will not be a super rich country for a long time, you know. So this is kind of obvious. And for me, again, the main reason, to be fair, if you guys really think, even if there is other country trying to surpass America, America can actually deny that if they really went with how powerful the military, how powerful you guys are in terms of military.
Almost everywhere in the world, on the ground, in the air, and at sea. Their weapons are technologically superior to other countries and almost always have military bases spread across the globe. Economic strength. A superpower must have a strong economy. This can be best measured through its gross domestic product. What is GDP? It's a way to measure the total value of all goods and services produced within a country. A high GDP typically indicates a strong economy. There are other factors as well. A moderate inflation rate, low unemployment, an extensive infrastructure, a reasonable amount of foreign debt. International influence. A superpower can convince other countries to support its interests, policies, and actions.
This is an amazing point, because most of the time we associate Americans being the good side, you know, and the others that are going against America, they are in the bad side. This is an amazing point, actually.
Often this takes the form of countries sharing mutual interests and building strong alliances. In extreme situations, a superpower has the willingness to impose economic sanctions and sometimes will threaten military action to get its way. Although these three factors, military might, a strong economy, and being able to influence other countries, are the hallmarks of a superpower, there are other factors as well. Superpowers are politically stable. It doesn't matter if they are democratic or authoritarian, just that the government is stable. Superpowers tend to have large populations and plentiful resources. They possess advanced technology, and their people have a strong sense of nationalism. They have a unified culture, and there is little or no sectionalism.
Okay, so I will share a hot take. Get ready, you guys. Some of you guys may not like what I'm about to say, but I think the last point, having a stable government, is where America can become a bit weaker in the future, because I feel like there is, maybe because I pay more attention to news nowadays, but I feel like there is a huge split between Americans, between the two parties, when they should kind of have, be a bit more together. Again, talking from outside, if I'm wrong, well, I apologize in advance, but at least I feel like that could be a problem for America in the future, since you may, inside of your own country, you may not agree with certain stuff, and staying together is super powerful.
So now we know the traits of a superpower. Let's look at some of the countries that may have been considered superpowers in the modern era. Britain may have been considered a superpower at one time. At the dawn of the 20th century, Britain possessed almost all of the traits of a superpower. It had a large military and the most powerful navy in the world, and with that navy it could project power almost anywhere. It had a vast network of colonies, so vast that it was once said that the sun never set on the British Empire. It was highly influential in world affairs and had a strong economy based on manufacturing and trade. Although Britain itself did not possess vast resources, it was able to rely on its colonies to produce everything it needed. Its internal population...
Dude, it's crazy. If you look at this, they had Canada, Australia, India. This is actually... Oh, man. This is kind of crazy, right?
...was not particularly large, but when combined with its colonies, it had a significant population as well.
For sure.
It had all the earmarks of a superpower. But what about the United States? What's the background story here? The answer may surprise you. Throughout most of its history, the United States was considered a minor, relatively insignificant country. It was far from Europe, had a very small army, and had little interest in becoming a major power. Aside from the Western Hemisphere, the United States largely ignored the rest of the world.
I mean, again, I'm sorry for pausing too much. In this video, I'm realized that I'm actually pausing a lot, but man, I admire America a lot because of this. The country, of course, end up not being super relevant not that long time ago, and right now you guys run the world. Talk about the crazy, crazy history. The fascinating stuff, honestly.
That began to change in 1898 as a result of the Spanish-American War. Almost everyone expected Spain would win, and win easily. After all, it was militarily much larger, yet the Americans swiftly defeated the Spanish at sea and on land. Not only did the United States soundly defeat a major European power, it had done so in a mere 6 weeks. What was even more impressive was that the United States had been able to capture Spanish territory far from its shores. By the end of...
That's so crazy. Nowadays, if we think Spain versus US is almost a joke. You guys do this, Spain is gone. But back in the day, this was probably a very difficult war because Spain was a strong country. Amazing how history can change, I love this.
End of the war, America controlled several territories in the Caribbean. It had also wrestled control of the Philippines Islands far from America's shores. With the Philippines, America now had a foothold in Asia, a base from which it could trade throughout the region. It also annexed the Hawaiian Islands, allowing it to control part of the Central Pacific Ocean. To everyone's surprise, the United States had built a small empire for itself. Europe began to realize that the United States had the potential to become a world power. Its vast resources and manufacturing capabilities had long been known, but in its war with...
For me, the main reason for this was actually two main reasons. Great leaders, great people. I think when you have this mix, you can become a superpower, and America actually had that. Apart, there is a lot of amazing advantages in the territory that you guys have, but again, I know I'm saying this a lot, but fascinating stuff.
Spain, the United States had shown an unexpected military capability. Not only could it raise an army very quickly, from less than 30,000 soldiers to 220,000 in a matter of months, It could fight far beyond its territorial waters. It was the perfect opportunity for the United States to establish itself as a rising
Look at that, such beautiful flag.
power. Yet, within a few years, the United States lost interest in the rest of the world and retreated into isolationism. It slashed the size of its military and refused to involve itself in European politics. It remained that way until 1917, when it entered the First World War. Much like the Spanish-American War, the United States entered the First World War with a small military. In fact, the army was smaller than 13 of the states that were already active in the war. It had a standing army of less than 130,000 soldiers in 1917. A year later, it had 4 million men under arms, half of them serving in Europe. And again, the United States showed that it could project force far from home. At its peak, some 10,000 soldiers arrived in France each day. For a time, however,
that's crazy. Oh my god, that's so crazy. And I think even nowadays, that's what other countries lack. They are good fighting close to their own borders. But America always have been good into going to other countries. This is fascinating.
It appeared that America wanted to become part of a wider world. It even proposed the creation of an international body to resolve disputes through dialogue, diplomacy, and mediation. It was the first institution of its kind in the modern era.
Okay, it's kind of ironic they end up proposing that. They probably said no, and America said, okay, I guess we became that then.
Instead of returning to isolation, the United States sought to bring the nations of the world together and participate in the global community beyond trade and military actions. It was called the League of Nations. More than 40 nations signed on to the League of Nations immediately. These included major powers such as the United Kingdom and France. Lesser powers such as Japan and the newly formed Soviet Union were also founding members. They were joined by many other countries around the world, including Brazil, China, South Africa, and others. At its peak, the League of Nations had more than 60 members, with representatives from every region of the world. Yet, the country that proposed the idea of the League of Nations, the United States, did not join. There was simply
okay, that's fantastic.
not enough political support to become a member of the international community. American politicians sought to retreat from world affairs and return to a policy of isolationism, and so they did. When the Second World War broke out in 1939, the United States sought to avoid becoming a direct participant in the conflict. It was willing to go to great lengths to ensure that the Allies were provided with weapons and resources, but nothing more. That changed on December 7, 1941, when Japan launched a massive surprise attack on America's largest military base in the Pacific, Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Japan had been a country on the rise for several decades and had great ambitions to become.
Okay, it's crazy that Japan really tried that. I remember learning this in history and in the class, but I always thought, how can this was such a dumb idea.
Become a powerful nation that wielded great power and influence. Japan believed that the time had come to drive Western influence out of East Asia and
great idea, Japan. Great idea.
Liberate its Asian brothers from European and American exploitation. And once liberated, it was Japan's responsibility to protect them. It sounded like a noble cause, but it sought to free Asia through exploitation. They understood that to build an empire, Japan needed to build a strong economy and a powerful military, but lacked the natural resources needed to expel the West. It believed that the only way that it could achieve its goals was to seize those resources by force. It soon found itself at odds with the United States, which objected to Japanese expansionism. Japan was not overly concerned with the United States. It saw them as a weak enemy whose people lacked the political will to fight a war.
Oh, really? They really thought that? I guess they will find out.
Believed that a single strike on the American Navy would end the war with a single blow. Not everyone agreed that the United States was a weak country, or that its people would avoid war at all costs. One of Japan's greatest military leaders, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, knew the potential of the United States. He had spent a considerable amount of time in America. He understood the vastness of America's resources, its industrial capabilities, and a strong sense of determination among its people.
Exactly, that's the thing. Americans, nowadays I don't know, but I mean, I know you guys are still an amazing country, but I feel like back in the day, you really cannot mess up with America.
Yamamoto saw the United States as a sleeping giant.
Even if right now you guys are more powerful, do you guys know what I'm trying to say? Back in the day, the pride was quite strong.
That once awakened would prove to be a dangerous enemy. And he was right. The United States did not back down after the destruction of its fleet at Pearl Harbor. Japan had woken the giant, and that spelled doom.
I know I should not be laughing at this, but imagine Japan realizing the mistake. Oh man, what? Okay, who had this idea to attack such giant country with so much potential? We are in deep trouble now.
Doom for Japan and its German ally. The United States had long been an industrial powerhouse. Although many American factories closed through the Great Depression, they were quickly reopened and retooled to produce war materials. New factories were built, increasing the amount of goods the United States could produce. With its vast natural resources, the United States had the necessary materials to supply its factories.
100%.
It mobilized its population, which had grown to 150 million people, to work in its factories and serve in the military.
At the time, this is a lot. Right now, it's like double, right?
In 1941, the US military had 1.4 million men under arms. By 1945, the size of the American military had grown to 12 million.
12 million? Oh man, that's more people than my country. That's crazy. Yep, good luck, Japan.
The army itself had increased from 1.4 million soldiers to well over 8 million in just 4 years. It also developed a secret weapon, one that would change the course of world history: the atomic bomb. Yes, the sleeping giant was fully awake and would never sleep again. The United States...
Okay, well, I feel like today I did not ask a lot of questions. Most of people, let's be real, do not watch this far the video. We are like 17 minutes right now. Question for you guys that are watching. Do you think even without the nuclear bomb, America would still win versus Japan, right? It would take longer, of course, but America did not need that. Of course, if you have that, you actually have a real superpower, you know, but I wonder, I think even without that, you guys would be fine at the time.
Emerged from the Second World War as the most powerful nation in the world, a title that it still holds today. As a result of the Second World War, the United States went from being a B-list actor on the world stage to the biggest superstar ever known. How exactly did this happen, and why was the Second World War the catalyst for superstardom? Let's explore. The war had devastated Europe. Hardly a major city survived unscathed. Cities such as London and Berlin were barely left standing as a result of almost continuous bombing raids.
That's one of the problems with Europe, is we kind of destroy ourselves all the time, you know, and in America you guys don't do this, but Europe crashes inside.
During the war, the German bombers destroyed an estimated 70,000 buildings in London. Another 1.7 million buildings were damaged. In Berlin, an estimated 80% of the city center was destroyed between Allied bombing and the Soviet Union's assault and eventual capture of the city. Dresden saw 90% of its city center destroyed in a single night. But that was not the worst. The German city of Jülich was completely leveled. 100% of its buildings were destroyed between bombing raids and fighting for control of the city during the war. Japan too faced widespread devastation. For much of the war, the Japanese home islands were safely out of reach of American bombers. That changed in June 1944, when the United States introduced the B-29 Superfortress, a new bomber that could reach Japan from great distances. The United States repeatedly attacked Japanese cities with firebombs, setting whole cities afire. On the night of March 9, 1945, the United States sent hundreds of bombers to attack the Japanese capital of Tokyo with incendiary bombs. Approximately 270,000 buildings, 25% of the city, were destroyed in this.
Oh, I did not know this. This is crazy. Okay, fascinating again. But those are probably my favorite type of videos to react, because I really love history. I love to learn about this stuff. I'm always not sure if this is the type of content you guys also enjoy or not. again, to tell me if this is the type of content you guys enjoy, the best thing is always leaving a like, because I assume if the video, sometimes it's not even the views, but a lot of likes, I assume you guys also agree with me, this is good content. But yeah, I mean, first, really, really amazing. The American history is fascinating, specific this time from becoming, not a super relevant country to becoming the major country. I find that an amazing case study.
This single attack. The fires killed an estimated 100,000 Japanese, with another million left homeless. The war ended when the United States attacked the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki with a new secret weapon, the atomic bomb. The attack on Hiroshima either damaged or destroyed nearly 70% of the city's infrastructure. In Nagasaki, nearly 40% of the buildings were destroyed or...
Okay, but nowadays, I think nuclear bombs are much stronger, right? Nowadays could be 100% or 99% Hiroshima is gone. Like this, right? Scary stuff, because we know other countries also have that.
Or damaged. When the war finally ended, the United States found that it was stronger than it was when it entered the war. And there are reasons for that. America was protected by thousands of miles of ocean on each side, and simply could not be attacked in any meaningful way. Its cities, factories, and infrastructure remained untouched. Not only that, but America's industrial production doubled during the war. Its GDP grew by $47 billion, and the unemployment rate dropped to 1.2%.
Oh, wow! 1.2%? And oh man, today is higher than that, right?
America still emerged from the war as a wealthy country with tremendous industrial capabilities. It was also more technically advanced than any other country and had the strongest military in the world. It was the only country to possess the most devastating weapon known to mankind.
Okay, actually a great question for you guys that we do not know for sure. But let's try to make some, this is just a fun chat that we are all having together here. At the time, America was super ahead of the competition. No doubt about that. This guy is explaining this actually quite well. But what about today? Do you guys think you are still that much ahead? A little less? I mean, you are still number one, so you guys are ahead. But you guys think is better than it was at this time? Or the gap is a bit short versus China, Russia, etc.? Actually, that's really interesting. I guess you can make arguments for both, right? Because you can say, no, it's shorter for sure because the other guys also had nuclear bombs. But if you forget nuclear bombs, I guess you cannot, to be honest, but if you try to forget that, I think America may be even a bit ahead nowadays.
The atomic bomb. By the end of the Second World War, the United States had all the hallmarks of a superpower, except for one, a willingness to participate in global affairs. In the past, American politicians had no interest, no ambitions to become a leading nation. It had shown this mentality after the First World War, when it chose to turn its back on the League of Nations and withdrew from European affairs. But this time would be different. The United States would embrace the rest of the world. It did so in many different ways. The United States committed itself to rebuilding Europe, specifically Western Europe. Through the Marshall Plan, the United States provided Western Europe with significant financial support and made available the necessary materials for countries to rebuild their cities, infrastructure, and manufacturing capabilities. It also helped rebuild Japan and created new political institutions that favored the United States. It later began to provide foreign aid to other countries around the world to curry favor among less developed countries. The United States also helped to establish and actively participate in new international institutions such as the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank, all of whom had headquarters in the United States. It filled political and economic voids in many parts of the world as a result of the demise of the British, French, and Japanese empires. It formed military alliances such as NATO and positioned itself to become the protector of the free world. The United States was not the only country that became a superpower from the ashes of the Second World War. It was joined by the Soviet Union, which would eventually become America's biggest enemy. The Soviet Union had suffered greatly during the Second World War.
Okay, time for another question. Do you guys think the biggest enemy may be a strong word, but let's use enemy, to be honest. The biggest enemy to America could be Russia or China. You can say we win against both. That's fair. But if you had to pick one, I may have to go with China, to be honest, because I feel like Russia, I don't know, this recently not the best look for them. Let's put things that way.
Especially in the early years of the conflict, but gained strength as the war progressed. By 1945, it was determined to control all of the territory it had captured from Germany. It had twice been devastated by Germany and was forced to exit the First World War before the conflict ended. After the Second World War, Russia was determined to create a buffer zone between itself and potential future adversaries. The countries of Eastern Europe would serve as that buffer zone. To ensure their loyalty, the Soviets installed communist puppet states. Europe became divided into two camps, countries that favored the United States and countries that favored the Soviet Union. This ultimately led to a Cold War in which most of the world would become polarized between the two countries. This changed in the early 1990s, when the Soviet Union collapsed. The reborn Russian Federation was still a superpower, but much weaker than it had been.
You can see Ukraine right there. Actually, I may react to a video about why Russia thinks Ukraine belongs to them and why Ukraine does not think the same. I think that can actually be interesting content.
Soon regained its strength, and Russia began to challenge the United States as a new Cold War started to emerge. Russia proved to be a paper tiger, however. When it invaded Ukraine in February 2022, the global community believed the conflict would last only a few weeks. Nobody ever expected Ukraine to fight back in any meaningful war, but it did. After Ukraine beat back the initial Russian advance, the Western powers began to slowly arm Ukraine with modern weaponry. Western arms changed the tide of the war. Russian equipment proved to be significantly inferior to American, British, and French weaponry, and today, the Russian army is on the defensive. Russia's status as a superpower has been questioned as a result of its failure on the battlefield, and the fact that world opinion has turned against it. Russia has very little influence in world affairs, and its economy is in tatters. It no longer meets the key qualifications of a superpower. If Russia is no longer a superpower, could the United States eventually lose its superpower status too?
Yes.
It's possible, but not anytime soon.
I mean, exactly. Not anytime soon, but of course can happen. I mean, that's why people have to stay together and kind of be thankful for everything you guys have built, you know, because if you forget that, yeah, I mean, there will be other countries that eventually will, this could be, you know, 200 years, 300 years. Look, people talk about the Roman Empire, that, oh, the Roman Empire also collapsed. Well, that's true, but it was like, what, 900 years or 1,000 years. So those empires can stay. If you really put in perspective, maybe American Empire is still fairly young and will collapse one day. Well, probably. I mean, one day could be 1,000 years, you know, but quite interesting.
Soon, America still possesses all of the traits of a superpower, but some areas are starting to weaken. The United States has amassed a staggering amount of debt in recent decades, and it faces a serious trade deficit that increases every year. Just
print more money.
Last year alone,
that's a joke, by the way.
Trade deficit increased by more than 10%, and there are no signs that the situation will improve in the next few years. Political divisions are widening, and the ability to compromise.
This is where I think could be a bit of a weak spot in America, but you guys know more than me. Maybe I'm wrong.
Is becoming more difficult. Even election results have been called into question. But not all is lost. America remains the most powerful nation in the world.
100%.
It has a modern and powerful military that is second to none. Its economy remains the largest in the world.
Oh, so beautiful.
And there is no evidence that its influence on world affairs is in decline. Problems can be fixed, and the United States will remain a superpower for the foreseeable future. But will it be the only superpower? China may be on the verge of becoming a superpower. It possesses many of the qualities of a superpower. It has the second largest economy in the world. It has the largest army in the world, and it's rapidly modernizing its military. China has the third largest nuclear stockpile and is actively expanding its arsenal. China has a strong and unified government, and its influence outside of Asia is growing. It has the largest population in the world and possesses advanced...
Okay, so hot take. I think the only way China may be able to surpass America, and to be fair, the person narrating the video said that, is if they can put, for example, Japan in their side, South Korea in their side, you know, or even other Asian countries like Saudi Arabia. Otherwise, I think I don't know. I think it's difficult.
Advanced technology. Yet China is facing some headwinds in its attempt to become a superpower. Its economy may not be as strong as it appears, and its navy still needs to build more ships that can operate far from its shores. Yes, China has the potential to become a superpower, but that might not be as soon as people think.
I agree.
What do you think? Will China become a superpower? Can it challenge the United States on the world stage? Let us know what you think in the comments below.
Well, I mean, I think you can make an argument that China is already a superpower. You know, it's not a random country. It's a country that we all, you know, respect and have to be afraid, because if they have atomic stuff, yeah, you have to be afraid. But I don't think they can challenge the US, at least in a time that matters. The only thing I would say is, with all the AI advancement nowadays, yeah, maybe something can happen if one country gets too much ahead of the other. But I don't know. I trust my American fellas and not fellas, because I'm not American, but my American friends to stay number one. Guys, hope you end up enjoying the video. If that's the case, do not forget to leave a like. I love to react to this type of content, to be totally open with you. And yeah, leave a like, subscribe, all the good stuff. See you guys next time. Bye.